Hey everybody, Tony here with a review of Mozart's Don Giovanni, which was part of the Salzburger Festspiele and was shown at the Haus für Mozart. The conductor was Christoph Eschenbach. The director of this production was Sven-Eric. The set designer was Rolf Glittenberg. The costume designer was Marian Glittenberg. The lighting was handled by Friedrich Rohm. The dramaturgy was done by Ronnie Dietrich. And the chorus master was Walter C., who was also a comprimario singer, a basso or baritone comprimario singer, who was very well known at the Wiener Staatsoper. Now, I don't need to explain any further of why I totally love Mozart's Don Giovanni with a passion and why I place it so up there with the likes of Mozart's Magic Flute. I mean, you can already watch that in an upload that I made like 4 months ago where I reviewed a production of Don Giovanni at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So let's just cut to the chase. What did I think about this production of Don Giovanni? I thought it was able to take the spirit of what the libretto was saying and moved it into a more modern setting. Like in this production, this is quite reminiscent of the 1930s. Specifically, the whole action takes part in a hotel, a 5-star hotel. You have the rooms up there in one floor, and then the lobby basically consists of a bar with your bartenders, bellhops, French maids, and all the guests that come into the hotel. Not to mention there are a few scene changes here and there, but still the action is set nonetheless in a hotel. And it's very reminiscent of films like Casablanca, Scarface, and many other films involving gangsters, or even the olden times like the 1930s, 40s, or 50s. Also, the costumes were also well done. They were extremely beautiful to look at. The standouts for me have to be Don Giovanni's ball costume, Don Ottavio's costume, and also Donna Anna's mourning clothing, as in boo-hoo-hoo, as she was mourning for her father. Yeah, her black clothing were the ones that stood out for me. And there were a few things that were quite questionable. First of all was the whole pillows and cushions being thrown out of the rooms part. That's one thing I did not get. It basically happened after Don Giovanni was discovered by Donna Elvira when he was trying to seduce Zerlina. That was one thing I did not understand. Why the hell were those pillows and cushions thrown out of the rooms? It was padding, though not at a painful extent. It was padding nonetheless. Also, the Commendatore statue's costume was quite unappealing. I mean, his head was only that of like a marble head, and his body is, only a uniform. I just really wanted to look grander, more regal. It just looked rather half-assed. No offense, really, but it looked a little bit half-assed for me. But still, the production was very colorful. It made a great use of elements of whodunit, gangster films, those old films of the 1930s and 50s, to such a great extent with an opera like Don Giovanni. After all, Don Giovanni is in essence a whodunit, a murder mystery, a supernatural story, a romance story, all packed into one exciting opera that everyone can remember. So I thought this production was very solid all around. And the singing, it was also solid. However, there were a few weak links. So I'll basically start off with the male soloists. And in the title role of Don Giovanni, we have Italian bass baritone Ildebrando D'Arcangelo. Now, this gentleman, no doubt, was born to play someone like Don Giovanni. Earlier in his career as a bass baritone, he sang the roles of Mazzetto and Leporello alongside a few smaller basso Verdi roles, like Piero from I Lombardi, the monk from Don Carlo, and Monterone from Rigoletto, and also that of Lodovico from Otello. All of these were recorded. And it's really nice to see that he has development in his career. And he was definitely in his element with Don Giovanni. Not only was he playing Don Giovanni and singing this role, but he was Don Giovanni incarnate. Sure, he may not have the heftier voices of Cesare Siepi, Nikolai Gyaurov, Giorgio Tozzi, Jerome Hines, and many other basso Don Giovannis of the past that I really seem to admire, but he has great musicality, great theatricality, and was able to breathe a lot of life into this character. Also, there was one thing that I forgot to mention about his final scene, or the Don Giovanni al Cenoteco scene. In this scene, Don Giovanni doesn't get dragged to hell. He remains first unconscious and then just stands up as if though his spirit was still living. I thought that was a little bit of a cop-out for me. But going back to D'Arcangelo, he's a very fine musician, he's a very fine actor, and he had a lot of energy to give with someone like Don Giovanni. And it's really wonderful to see him in this part. I have seen a couple of clips of him on YouTube, and I really admired his voice. And here, I thought it was put to such a fantastic use. There was no signs of cracking, no signs of faltering. It was a well-focused and very virile and masculine bass baritone instrument that I really hope to hear more of in the near future. Aside from just watching clips of it on YouTube or hearing clips of it on Spotify, I really hope to see this guy some more live one day, because he's definitely a very exciting singer/actor. He is that exciting for me, and he really, really, really made the cut as Don Giovanni, in my opinion. And it's no wonder why fans and critics really adore him in this role. And playing his servant, Leporello, is another Italian bass baritone whose name is Luca Pisaroni. Now, Luca Pisaroni is another Italian bass baritone who is also very well known in the bel canto works and also works from the Baroque period and that of Mozart. Here, I thought he was able to play Leporello's sarcasm very well, and his chemistry with D'Arcangelo's Don Giovanni was so there. And he was able to be on par with D'Arcangelo's Don Giovanni. They were able to play very well off of each other. And I always like it when a Leporello is almost the same age as his master Don Giovanni. Oh, sure, Don Giovanni is quite young, but it's actually really cool to see Leporello the same age as his master, because, well, they work well off of each other, and you could really see that even though they seem like they're friendly with each other or friends, like master and servant, they kind of get on each other's skin in some occasions. And it's really nice to see that Luca Pisaroni was able to play that sarcasm very well, and it's backed with a very fine and agile voice. I mean, it's such a gorgeous instrument, and it may not be that full sounding, but it's still a gorgeous instrument nonetheless. And he had such superb comic timing, and he doesn't really play Leporello as a clown, so he's definitely a great interpreter of Leporello these days, and his chemistry with D'Arcangelo, fantastic. The commendatore, I'm less crazy about. The commendatore for the evening was Tomasz Konieczny, who is a bass baritone very well known for his works in Wagner, Puccini, and Verdi. Now, I was not a huge fan of Konieczny as the commendatore. Usually, when I think of a singer of the commendatore, I want it to be a basso profondo. I want it to be like a dark, black, round, rich, and extremely virile basso, the ones that can reach a low D. When I think of a commendatore, I think any basso who has sung the likes of the Landgrave Hermann from Tannhäuser, the kings from any Wagner opera, any of the two giants, Fafner, Fasold, or any of the basso roles like Hunding or Hagen, Gurnemanns, Titoral, any basso profondo who has sung those roles. Hell, I would usually think of any basso who has sung the Grand Inquisitor or Philip II to sing someone like the Commendatore, even though this is a very thankless part. But when it comes to Tomasz Konieczny in this part, I did not really care for him in this role. Of course, he has a good instrument, but it sounds just a little bit too high for someone singing the Commendatore. He doesn't sound like the likes of Gottlob Frick or many other fantastic bassos. I can name a lot of bassos who could have sung this part. You could have had Morris Robinson. You could have had Franz Josef Selig, Hans-Peter König, Stephen Milling. Any of those basso profondos would have, well, been perfect for this character. But still, Tomasz Konieczny, though he had a very fine voice, he was the weak link of this opera, because I wanted a very fuller sounding voice and a blacker sounding voice singing something like Commendatore. It was quite of a disappointment, but he's still a fine singer, by the way. Mazzetto was sung by a young Italian baritone by the name of Alessio Arduini. He has such a fine voice, and he didn't play Mazzetto as a clown, but a very passionate lover and someone who's very youthful. And I could definitely see a bright future with this baritone. He's still quite young, and he still needs a lot of time to grow, but he's on the right path. Don Ottavio was sung by Andrew Staples. Now, this is another male singer that I was not so crazy about because, well, even though he was also a fine singer, his tone didn't really resonate with me. It didn't sound so full. It didn't sound like how a full lyric tenor should sound like. It sounded nasally. It sounded, well, quite tinny, so to say. And yes, I know he's still quite young, and it will take time for that voice to be fully developed. And usually when I think of a singer singing the likes of Don Ottavio, I think of better singers like Anton der Motta, Fritz Wunderlich, Walter Ludwig, and many other great tenors of the past, like even Cesare Valetti. I really expected his voice to be a lot fuller sounding, and, well, his voice was only okay. It wasn't the greatest voice I've ever heard, nor was it the worst. It was just meh. I mean, it still needs a lot of time for it to develop. So, out of all the males, I definitely love D'Arcangelo, Pisaroni, and Arduini. They have a lot of passion, and they were able to give their roles such character. And then we move on to the female roles. Donna Elvira was sung by German soprano Annette Fritsch. Now, she's a fine singer. Now, she started her career as a light lyric soprano, but has gradually moved up to the more full lyric roles. However, with her as Donna Elvira, I expected a more fuller sounding full lyric soprano or spinto soprano voice, the likes of Julia Varadi, Rosalind Plowright, Anna Tomova-Zintov, Renee Fleming, Kirita Kanawa, or even that of a coloratura mezzo voice like Cecilia Bartoli or Joyce Di Donato. Annette Fritsch, though she is a fine singer with very great top notes, is quite shrill, and that can sound very unhealthy for someone singing Donna Elvira, who I usually prefer having a spinto soprano sing this role. I mean, I would usually prefer Donna Elvira to be sung by anyone who sung the Marschallin, Chrysothemis, Arabella, many other full lyric roles. However, with Fritsch, She was shrill in tone in some moments. However, her acting was very great. She was able to portray Donna Elvira's very neurotic and crazed nature and very desperate nature. So while her voice isn't really on par with a lot of past singers, she makes up for it in terms of her acting. Lenneke Ruiten sang Donna Anna, and I thought she was a very fine singer with a very fine sounding voice. Of course, it's not that thick compared to the likes of Joan Sutherland, Christina Deutekom, Elena Moshuk, Edda Moser, Rita Shane, and many other dramatic coloratura sopranos, because, well, I usually love it when a dramatic coloratura soprano sings Donna Anna. It adds a lot more bite to this role. But still, she's a very lyrical singer. She sang the part very well. She has a very even tone, very great high notes, and very homogeneous in quality. And her acting was very solid. She was able to portray Donna Anna's loneliness, especially when she found out that her father was killed. I mean, there was in one scene, in the opening scene, where Don Giovanni was basically using Donna Anna's hand to just stab the commendatore with a knife, thus framing her. And I thought with this move, it really made Don Giovanni look a lot more sinister. And going to Miss Ruiten, she has a very fine voice, very delicate sounding voice. And even though she doesn't have a heavier voice for Donna Anna, she was still able to portray the character very well. And she was able to sing the role very well. Her Non Mi Dir was so touching, especially when navigating the coloratura runs. I thought those were well done. In the role of Zerlina, we have Valentina Nafornita, who is a very young soprano who I believe won an award. I forgot which one, but she won something like a couple of years ago, or probably sometime this year or 1 year ago. And she's a light lyric soprano specializing in the lyric coloratura soprano repertoire and the light lyric repertoire. Here, as Zerlina, I thought she was very sweet sounding. Her acting was absolutely spot on, as she was able to make Zerlina quite minxish, but more than anything, it's her singing that is just so heavenly. It's a silvery and very sweet sounding instrument that is just so heavenly, so luscious, and very bell-like. So overall, while there were a few weak links here and there, the singing was nonetheless quite solid. It was decent all around, with the standouts being D'Arcangelo, Pisaroni, Arduini, Ruiten, and Nafornita. So, the conducting was, well, very solid all around. It had a great sense of passion, and, well, it's all thanks to Maestro Christoph Eschenbach. So overall, this was a very good evening for watching something like Don Giovanni. Sure, some of the singers could have been a lot better, but it will take a lot more time. And sure, the casting for some of the characters could have been a lot better, but even then, the singers were still fine, and they were able to hold their own pretty well. But the production was something that I could really write home about, because it's just so full of color, and especially the lighting. I mean, the lighting was just done very effectively, whether it's the final scene or many other scenes in particular. The lighting was just done very well. So overall, great production, great lighting. Sure, the singers, well, some of the singers do need a little bit of polishing, but the conducting was nonetheless great. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, where I review Charlotte Salomon, which is a new French opera. It's coming out this year at the Salzburger Festspiele. So until then, this is Antoni signing off and wishing you all a good night.